Alright guys, I want to talk a bit about hooks. I get a lot of requests on hooks types and sizes and stuff like that. And I probably spent more time finding out what the best hook is than probably anything else really since I was a kid, you know, trying to find that perfect hook. And there's been a lot of changes in hooks over the years, starting with when sport fishing made the sport fishing version of a circle hook popular, you know, years and years ago. They used to be only for commercial fishing and stuff like that. And then they're brought into sport fishing, and it was mainly they were marketed as conservation. They didn't really talk a whole lot of fishermen into using them for catching more fish. It was more like, you know, it's good for the fish, which I'm all for, of course. But, you know, as a kid, you know, I started, you know, fishing as a guide when I was 14, 15 years old. So I wanted to catch as many fish as possible. So I shied away from them for years, and it was a mistake. But a lot of it has changed over the years. The hook has improved. It wasn't, you know, all you know, 100% batting 1,000 all the time with circle hooks out of the gate. So a lot of changes. I love all these hooks here, and this is probably the most valuable thing I can share with you right here. Years and years and years and years of, you know, testing and messing around and hours on the water to find the right hook. So I'm going to share this with you. One thing you're going to notice right away is all these hooks have a straight eye. I've gotten completely away from the bent eye. I am not a snell knot guy. If you're a snell knot guy, you might want to stick with the bent eye. I've never been a snell knot fan. I do use snells when I need a long leader for a stinger hook, like we're adding a treble hook for a large bait. I'll use a snell knot for that. Other than that, I use a Palomar on everything. Sometimes I'll use a loop knot. But with a straight eye, these hooks are absolutely deadly. The hookup and, you know, retaining the fish ratio is just phenomenal with these hooks. And like I said, it's pretty valuable stuff. I hope you guys take advantage of this. So, all right, let's talk about some of the brands here. My go-to hook, my #1 choice, is the OWNER MUTU, M-U-T-U. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's M-U-T-U, light wire hook. My buddy Chip Bragg turned me on to these. We were striper fishing together in freshwater with some downlines. And I think we had 30 strikes and caught 30 fish that day, and I was sold. It's similar to the hooks I've been using, but something about this one, maybe it's the light wire, whatever it is, just seem to have a very impressive hookup ratio with this. Now it has a needle point, light wire, which means the bait's going to swim a lot better. It's going to look better in the water. The hook's not going to jump out to a fish as much as a heavier wire, of course. It's got a welded eye or a soldered eye. Okay, this is non-offset. Okay, now they also have it in the offset version. The non-offset is the tournament version. If you get the one that's a regular light wire, it will be offset. I'll get into that in a second. My next favorite brand right here is the Trocar Eagle Claw, the old Eagle Claw Trocar. Of course, it's a new version, not the old Eagle Claw. This one is a offset here, but they also have it in non-offset. I love the cutting point on this. Evil cutting point. I don't know if you can see that. Nice sharp, very sharp point. Welded eye or soldered eye, closed eye. It's great if you do use a snell. Okay, next brand, Mustad Ultra Point Demon. Love this one for herring. It's a very light wire, even lighter than the MUTU. Has a straight shank, of course. It is a crimped eye, so it's not welded, and it's a needle point, very sharp. Really good hook for herring. Last but not least, the Daiichi Circle Chunk Light. Very wide, crimped eye, needle point, very sharp. This is the strongest out of all the hooks. I tried to bend one of these once. I tried to offset it, and I broke my pliers. It wouldn't bend, and it wouldn't break either. So if you're fishing your laydowns, you know, rocks, boulders, if you're fishing a river for striped bass or catfish and you have laydowns, you have to use full drag, this is a great hook to go with. This will never break on you, and it sure as heck won't bend. All right, now when to use each hook. Let's start with freshwater, okay? Blueback herring, alewife herring, I use the 2/0 to 3/0. I don't like to go with a very big hook because it really kills the way the bait swims. The light wire is very good. That's why that Demon Circle is just killer. That Mustad Ultra Point Demon is just wicked. Super light. It lets the bait really swim nice, and hookup ratio is fantastic with all these, so I'll stop saying that. They're all good. All right, now let's move on with shad. Threadfin shad. I treat a threadfin a lot like a herring. Again, 2/0 to 3/0. Now if I'm pulling these baits, the herring and these threadfin shad, on a planer board or a float and I'm keeping the line tight all day, I go with an offset. Okay, I go with an offset because the bait is being pulled forward and we can get away with an offset. The reason the offset is good is in case someone grabs it and yanks the rod a little bit, you're not totally, you know, put down. You can still hook that fish. It's almost like a little bit of a hybrid. But the problem with the offset is if you fish on a loose line where the fish can pick it up and swallow it, he'll probably get hooked in the stomach. So, good rule of thumb, if the line's tight, if the bait is out in current and the line's being pulled tight, or if you're trolling or if you're pulling with the trolling motor very slow with live bait, offset is okay. Great hook. All these. Same rule for all these. Alright, gizzard shad. Big gizzard shad. Let's say 12, 14 inch gizzard shad. They get very fat in the, you know, in the mid area there from back to belly. I use a large hook. Okay, I go about, some people use bigger, but I use about anywhere from a 5/0 to 7/0 for a big gizzard shad. I try to use single hooks. I don't really like using a stinger. I feel the stinger really scares fish away sometimes, and I only want big fish anyway. But if we do use a stinger, I'll take that front hook. What I mean by stinger is I'll tie a snell with a long tail and I'll have a treble hook. You know, medium-sized treble hook to hook in the belly or just let it hang as a stinger for these large baits. Now, if I'm using a stinger, I will take my nose hook down a few sizes because they barely get hooked in that front hook anyway. They almost always get the stinger, so I have this big piece of jewelry on the nose of the fish, right? So I'll tend to downscale there. But I like to go with single hook, you know, that 7/0, 8/0, 9/0 even, you know, for really big gizzard shad is cool. Again, we want an offset and we're pulling live baits. All right, staying with freshwater, trout. 6/0 to 9/0 offset is what I like for trout. Same thing with mackerel and saltwater, very similar style fish. Trout, you really can't use a stinger hook because they'll get wrapped up on you a lot. So you have to have that one good hook. So I'll go a little bigger, 6 to 9/0. If it's very, very clear water, I'll dial it back. I'll dial my leader back. I don't care if I have to go super light and small to get that one fish, I'm going to do it. So if you start with a 9/0 and you're not getting bites, scale it back a little bit and see. But again, offset because we're pulling a live bait. All right, moving on to saltwater. Let's talk about bunker, menhaden, pogies. These are similar to a gizzard shad. You know, they get to be that, you know, most of them are in that 12 to, I don't know, 10 to 13 inch kind of range. Very, very tall belly. A little thinner than a gizzard shad when they get to be that big, but super strong, super powerful bait, you know. So I go large with that, 7/0 to 8/0, sometimes a 9/0, and we'll use the one hook. I used to do a stinger, and I got away from that. These big bass in saltwater just suck it up. You know, so we just go with the one. And a circle hook, you really can't use a tandem with 2 circle hooks, although I have done it. All right, eels, one of my favorites, right? Now I go a little smaller with eels. Again, offset because it's alive and we're pulling it along. Even if we're drifting with it on the bottom with a weight, still offset. If we're in a planer boards floats, drifting behind on a live line, offset. A little smaller, 5/0, 5 to 7/0, something like that. I've gone down to 3/0, 4/0, you know, when it's very, very clear. Chesapeake can get very clear sometimes. So I'll go a little smaller, and that offset really, really, really helps you out because, like I said, if someone should yank the rod or maybe the fish doesn't completely get it all, it's not in its stomach or in the throat but in the mouth, that offset will catch it nice. Now, when we want to get away from offset, very important, you don't want to use an offset hook when there's slack line on your bait. Like if you're cut bait fishing and you're casting a bunch of lines out with no weight or very little weight and the bait's just sitting on the bottom, here's a inline hook right here. This is what we use, and the reason we use the inline is these big bass suck up all, I don't care if it's a whole dead bunker on the bottom, they'll just suck it right up. And they'll swim along because that line is slack, they don't feel the bait, they don't feel anything, and it goes down the belly. Well, with an inline, as soon as the fish swims off and tightens the line, that inline has a very good chance of coming out of the stomach and finding purchase in the corner or the top, whatever. But it has a very good chance of coming out of the mouth, out of the belly. Now, a few times, you know, while experimenting, I used offset. And what happened is we would have these big fish, they get close to the boat, and we lose them. I'm talking like 2 out of 3 fish we're losing right at the boat. It was horrible. And you feel up the line, you know, slide up the line, and you feel abrasion up here. Well, that hook was in his belly, and that abrasion where it was rubbing on the fine teeth, the grab teeth. You know, they don't have teeth for cutting, but for grabbing. And you feel that little abrasion on there. And sometimes we'd fight the fish up to the boat. The fish is right there. You lose the fish. A few minutes later, we turn around. He's thrashing behind us, belly up, almost dead because we tore its stomach out. So, you know, inline is the way to go. when they swallow it, this thing almost always comes out. And you know, when that fish gets close to the boat, I've said it a million times if you've seen any of my videos, the shock absorption is gone. If you're going to lose a fish, it's going to be right at the boat where everything is tight, your angles are very extreme, the fish thrashes more, it'll try to turn its stomach out. If you're going to lose a fish, that's where it's going to happen. So you don't want them hooked in the belly at that point. You're going to lose the fish and the fish is going to die. So inline, and you're not sacrificing anything, guys, I'm telling you. If I sacrificed, catching fish, I would have to find another method, because I love turning fish loose, man. I love it. I love it. I love watching them swim away. But I love catching them a whole lot more, to be honest with you, So inline, you're not sacrificing anything with these hooks. Inline will get them every time. All right, move on to the Daiichi Circle Chunk Light. This one happens to be red. I don't really like a red hook, but this is all I had when I got them. What I like about these, other than the whole design really, is they have in the Circle Chunk Light, you can't tell on this hook, it's a different model, but they put a little tiny barb down in here, and it keeps your bait from sliding up and rehooking itself. So if my fingers are the head, and you have the bait swimming along like this, sometimes it lays over, it slides up the barb, lays over, and hooks again. So now the bait is up here, and the hook is buried, and you're not going to set the hook on that fish. They have a little tiny barb in the shank that keeps the bait from coming up and rehooking itself. That's a Circle Chunk Light Wide, has that. You'll see a little barb in there. And I kind of kicked myself when I saw it, because I always thought one day I would come out with my own line of hooks that would have that in there, because that's always been an issue. We've tried all kinds of things to keep that from happening. So, if you guys have any questions on hooks, or you think I missed something, or you know of a brand hook that I should try, please leave it in the comments. Please subscribe. You can really help me out by doing that, guys. I really do appreciate it. And check out my buddy Kid Cochise, the con man, Kid Cochise Outdoors, over on YouTube. He's got some great videos, a lot of good information, and they have a blast in their videos. So go check him out. Thanks for watching, guys. Love you. Mean it. Stay safe on the water. I'll leave a few for me.